Taking copious amount of notes at a conference or a gathering, whether it be online or in person, is not necessarily the best way to get the most from a conference. In fact, Leyna Lightman, who has been attending conferences for over 15 years, both as a participant and as a host, has 3 takeaways that we can apply and execute to help us maximize our experience and takeaways when we attend conferences and gatherings, whether they're online or in person. Leyna calls herself a Grainiac. Her more formal career was in art museums. She was in the education department of the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, as well as a founding staff member at the Board Art Museum in Michigan State University. She left the museum world and followed her inner sun whisperer to Los Angeles, where she now shakes her pom-poms for small-scale grain farms. And she connects bakers worldwide with what she calls good grains that have been farmed organically, regeneratively, and sustainably. I'm really excited to bring these takeaways to you from Leyna Lightman. Enjoy the conversation. I'm Natalie Forstbauer, editor-in-chief and founder of Heart and Soul magazine. Be sure to like these interviews. It helps them be seen, share them with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. And if you haven't subscribed to Heart and Soul magazine yet, be sure to grab your subscription for just $39.99 a year at heartandsoulmagazine.com. Big love and make yourself an amazing day. Leyna, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about 3 ways we can all prepare for our next conference or gathering, whether it be online or in person. I really appreciate your time and your experience that you're going to share with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to connect on this.
Yeah, it's awesome because you've been attending conferences for more than probably 10 or 15 years, and you attend them yearly as well as you host your own gatherings as somebody who is a leader in those gatherings. And you also run workshops. And so you've been in the space in a lot of different ways. And so I think you have a lot of value to bring to us today. So I really appreciate you sharing your genius with us.
Thank you. I don't know about genius, but I'm quite excited to nerd out on this topic. Connecting is something of a craft and an art for me.
It is. So you're going to share with us 3 of what you consider to be some of the key touch points to experiencing a conference fully and really getting the most out of that gathering. So just at the top, what would those 3 touch points be? And then we'll go more into them.
Sure. Today, I wanted to talk about being generous in these spaces. I wanted to talk about staying curious in these spaces. And then the third point, I'm saying, see the forest through the trees. And by which I mean, it's not about information, it's about relationship building.
Oh, I love it. So when you say be generous, what do you mean by that?
So by being generous, I mean, when you're showing up in a place of connection around farming or really any sort of craft or practice that has to do with best practices, give away what you got. Don't hold it close to you. Don't pretend that there's a culture of scarcity around who knows whom. Give away your connections, offer to introduce people, offer your information. It's one of those laws of attraction or something where the more you give away, kind of spiritually and energetically of what you've got in that community, the more it's generative. It comes back to you. It plants new seeds. People water them in ways you didn't even expect. You become kind of like the planter of that seed, and you don't even know where those rhizomes are going to go, which is really beautiful. You don't know who's going to inspire whom, and 3 connections down the line. So I just really encourage folks they're honestly in a lot of communities, it's just a human inclination. We can hold these things really close to our chest and get caught in a bit of a delusion of scarcity. So that's why I start with this notion of just be generous, offer what you got.
That's really powerful, Leyna. And what happens when we do hold our cards close? Because sometimes it's vulnerable to share, because sometimes we don't want to overstep, and sometimes we don't want to come off as like I know more than you, and sometimes we don't want to share secrets because like what we're doing is really working well, and we don't want to like share them with the competition. So how can we move past that, and what um might open our minds to be more generous in the way that we share?
Ooh, those are great follow-ups. Well, first of all, I'm not saying to ignore boundaries.
Mm,
So that fair enough, like within reason. I really trust y'all's instincts on this, that if it feels like they're appropriate boundaries to mind them. And I also think that nobody likes a know-it-all, so mind that, that this is about exchange and reciprocity, and that really we could pay attention to our plants and our farms and learn a lot from them. I'm reading Finding the Mother Trees right now. Side note, if anyone has read that, just the way that plants actually, our ecosystems, communicate with each other and nurture each other. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about schooling people.
mm,
And I think you really kind of get to the heart of it. And the last bit is where commerce kind of inserts itself. Sometimes humans, I think we get a little bit diluted by all of these scarcity mindsets that capitalism really sets us up to buy into, that I'm in competition with. I think something like EcoFarm or a small farming conference is a great example on this. We are not in competition with each other. Okay. If I added up my particular niche is grain. If I added up all the acres of small scale grain in this state, we wouldn't hold a candle to some of the bigger grain farms. We are all in this together. We are on a team. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to set it up as like a small farm against big farm team, but like that's actually a delusion that I think that people sometimes get caught in when scarcity kind of sends us into that fear place. And that actually acting out of a place of radical trust and generosity does teach your own self to step out of the scarcity mindset. And it's supportive of your own, often business. It comes back to you, often business wise, energetically. What goes around comes around. And just giving of what you've got. And when you get that inclination to like grasp, to kind of do the opposite and give away. I don't know, try it a couple of times, people, and see if it makes you feel good, and see if it brings you something spiritually, or in terms of actual, like, those people might come to you when there's a possible contract farming gig that didn't fit for them, because,
mm-hmm. Yes, I love that. I love that. And some of the lead sentences or questions that we can often lead with ourselves is we can ask ourselves what's working for us, and we can ask people to tell us more. Like when someone says something, we can say, "Oh, tell me more about that," right? And then we can bounce that conversation back and forth and glean more deeply from each other, and really listen with a big open ears and big open heart. And which leads us to our second point, which
you
is
are queen of segues. That was really good. Yeah.
Which is, are you gonna leave us hanging?
No. So the second idea was be curious. Oh, be curious.
That's
Which
right.
actually, I love how you framed that, because it could also be about, the first was kind of about giving, and you could consider being curious about receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get so obsessed with like output that you forget the input, that to listen, and you might get to take home some wisdom actually. That's part of the beauty. I mean, curiosity is pretty reciprocal as well, to be fair. But one way to think about it is from the receiving end, that sometimes, you show up in a group of people who are like-minded, in the sense that you're all, look, we're at EcoFarm in this example. We're all showing up at a conference about small scale regenerative farming. So we all have things in common. A way to approach that is, I'm in a sea of possible teachers here.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone here has something to offer me in terms of their experience and their wisdom in what they've been doing, because I am just wee little me and it's all I can do to be in my corner of the green movement, whether, I personally am an advocate and activist and grainiac, I call myself, but, if you're a farmer or a miller or whatever, you might have expertise in your niche. But we can all only live one life. And so to be in this like community of all sorts of people who have all kinds of, God only knows what sorts of magic to offer in terms of actual hard resources, introductions, experiences, ways of looking at the world, also specific to EcoFarm and many other my favorite kind of spaces, honestly, is to have all different kinds of minds and experiences. Mm-hmm. So maybe you're a mathematician. Bring me that bit of wisdom and how can that affect how I think about my fields? Or maybe you're an artist. Artists are brilliant at shaking up how we think about our paradigms. I'm biased because I work in the arts, but so if you don't arrive curious, ready to receive and to ask that question, who are all these teachers around me, then you might miss it.
Yeah. And I love the way you said that. And the other piece that I just might add is it's actually shown that when we sit in a place of curiosity, we're actually more open to learning. We absorb more, we retain more, and we hold on to more. And when we sit in a place of curiosity of not just what we can, like our wisdom that we can share and our wisdom that we can get, and you touched on this already, Leyna, it's like, who can I introduce this person to that would make a big difference in their life, whether it's a producer or somebody who's great at like composting or enriching the organic matter in the soil, or if it's a farm marketing conference, who do I know that is a buyer or who's great at direct selling or farmers markets or whatever that piece is. So just be really curious about who do I know that I could introduce and connect to each other in the space that I meet. So to be mindful of that throughout the conference.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And which brings us into our third takeaway of how to best prepare ourselves so we can maximize our time and effort spent at these conferences and gatherings, which is
see the forest through the trees.
That's right. So how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know how do you know what to do, who to talk to, where to spend your time, and how to and also avoid that fatigue, that conference fatigue, or the Zoom fatigue if it's online. How do you see the forest?
Okay, so one thing gets a little strategic about this, and when I say that, just again, I'm talking about relationship building versus getting really obsessive about this piece of information, or you know what, even getting obsessive if you're presenting or hosting, getting obsessive with making sure it's the right number of plates and that all your PowerPoint slides are together, which is a really easy trap to get really perfectionist as a presenter or host. Really, it's about connecting. And I think that one thing I do is to be really direct about it and intentional. And I pay attention, especially when I'm hosting, I really go through that registration roster beforehand. If I don't recognize a name, I literally will email people and be like, who are you? Tell me what you do. I Google people. And they're like, great, you are from this nonprofit. You have to meet this other person. I make sure that it's like, okay, here's our 2 hours or our 3 days, whatever, of finite FaceTime. But I'm ready for that. I'm ready to maximize that by knowing who should meet each other, for myself, for other people. Be ready to connect those dots.
That's really powerful. So looking at the conference or gathering ahead of time, identifying maybe who the speakers are. We might not be able to know who's there, but we might have a good idea of what intentions we want to set before going into a conference, whether that's making connections to grow our network, making connections for support, just emotional, mental, spiritual support as a farmer or as a gardener in the space, or as a marketer in the space, or setting the intention to connect with people who are making really, really good compost, who've turned like sand into rich living soil food webs or whatever that is. But going in with that clear intention, I think really helps us.
That's a great follow-up point.
Overwhelmed.
Yep. I think that's a great follow-up point is if you're not the host and you don't have access to that roster, just know I would really benefit from meeting someone who is like doing X or Y. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really great point. Another way to be really direct. And maybe the second part of that for those of us who are more shy, which I just happen to not be especially shy. I'm really a people person, but as a people person, I hold a lot of space for different kinds of experiences with social situations. It's not weird. It's not weird. And just to kind of own, even if you don't know exactly why, maybe you've organically met someone and you don't exactly know how you might benefit each other, but just to say, can we have a phone call? Can I learn about what you're doing? Can I just bring that curiosity? Because I think that even if we just connect a little bit more deeply and you tell me your story, I have this feeling that it doesn't have to be relevant right now. It doesn't have to be like, yes, I have the grant for you today. I have a sense that there's some synergy with what we're doing, and maybe this will be relevant next year. Let's get connected. I think that also, just to kind of come back to the beginning of this, to do a little comparing of getting really careful about information, which information is also very useful to take good notes, whatever in these sessions. I'm presenting information at EcoFarm, so like, please pay attention, But information can only get us so far, I think, in terms of these experiences in the long term. Whereas an introduction, a beginning of relationship building, has that potential power to be super generative in ways that are less immediately measurable, and a little bit more trust is involved, that you just say, somebody's good, I'm going to water this seed, or I'm going to, maybe the power in that introduction is actually, oh, next year I realized you need to know this person, and now they've created a project. See how we can like wind up with these concentric circles of God knows what magic. We can't necessarily predict it. So there's a lot more trust involved in that, but I think there's also the potential for a lot more power.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And then also just being okay with meeting somebody. And if you feel like you have a connection with them, just asking them, say, hey, is it okay? I'd love to connect with you further. Maybe we can exchange numbers, and I'd love to hear about how you got started, or I'd love to hear why you're doing what you're doing, because it sounds really meaningful, because people really like to share their stories and they like to be heard and they like to be seen. So the more interest we can show in another person's project or journey, the more willing they are to share with us too. And there's more opportunity for us to learn from each other.
I guess the only kind of like sub point I would add that around my commitments to this, especially like specifically to farming, is that I think that these different almost parts of my ethos about how I move in these spaces, one thing that's really important to me is expanding from my place in this community the best I can, expanding access and participation, and maybe this goes along with generosity, growing this community. So more people can partake of the fruits of what is being grown, and more people can grow these things. And there's privilege involved in both. And that I really think that cultivating this spirit of openness, of information, of resources, of connection is part of expanding the community. It's not, no, we're going to keep this community like there's only so much and only the people who are here can have it. Instead, it's no, please, we really need to expand it. We need it to grow in size and in quality and kinds of people and kinds of experiences, from all walks of life, all over the world, all different cultural heritage, all different financial backgrounds. All those different folks need access. And I think that building a sense of cultural openness is part of expanding this, because you need to be able to envision yourself participating, and you touched on something really important. It's not always hard resources that you need. There is emotional and moral support required in farming. I just had a voicemail today from one of my farmers, and she's following up on logistics, but she left me this message and she's like, I just, wow, harvest really sucked. We lost almost all our harvest at the end of our growing season. We lost almost all of our harvest to one big storm. And that is ouch. That threatens everything. And in order to stay in this game, we need each other. And because of sometimes the geographical nature of farming, it can get so siloed that you don't always have a sounding board for just like, yo, I just lost my whole season. And I think that, again, cultivating this culture of openness makes it a more sustainable pursuit for everyone, for anyone, for new people. New people need a shoulder too.
Yeah, that's so
Big time.
So true, Leyna. And thank you for presencing that, because it is something that it's kind of the silent piece of farming that a lot of people in farming don't speak about, and who are sitting on the sidelines as consumers or marketers that aren't, that part of the farming isn't necessarily seen. And so it's this silent struggle. So thank you for presencing that, which also reminded me of the other piece of when we were talking about seeing the forest of the trees and going in with intentions. And I also wanted to just really hold space for anyone who's participating in a conference and gathering. If they don't really know what their intention is, it's okay to go in with just full-on curiosity. Like, I wonder what I'm going to learn. I wonder who I'm going to meet. I wonder what conversations I'm going to have, because that's also an intentional way to go into a conference is just being open to whatever opens up. So there's no right and wrong way to prepare or to be intentional or to show up for these gatherings. It's really meeting yourself where you're at, and it could be that you're just showing up, and that is that's success. That's all it is right there, is that you're showing up, you're registered, you're walking through those doors, and you're going to see what it brings. And then the other piece is where you touched on. It's not about gathering information and all the things to do and to be better and to be more. It can also be about just being present with the people you meet in hallways. I was told by a mentor a long time ago, in my early 20s, that often the magic at conferences happens in the hallways. It's not necessarily sitting in the room listening to the speaker. Not to say that speaker's information is invaluable, because it really is. It's just that the relationships that we develop at these events can be life-changing, and they can be really nurturing to our farms and to our marketing and to our families and to our ourself and for others.
Thank you so much for both of those points. And I really agree with you. And maybe just to go back to point 2, that you really can't go wrong if you show up curious and ready to receive. Just maybe we should have started with that point. Yeah. Can't go wrong right there.
I love it. Well, we can end with that, Leyna. Be generous, see the forest of the trees, show up with intention, and be curious.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leyna. And I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for dropping your wisdom today. And be sure to, where can people find you? How can we connect with you? Because I know that you're an artist, and and being a Grainiac, as you call yourself, is something that you gift to the small farm community. And I'm just wondering, how can people connect with you and reach you?
I can be found 2 easy places. My website, which is myfullname.com, Leyna Lightman, LeynaLightman. And my Instagram handle is the same, my full name. And those are both good places where you can learn about what I'm hosting and what's going on. And if people reach out directly, I'm pretty good about getting back to folks. I love connecting on these topics.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know that a lot of people are looking forward to your presentations at the EcoFarm Conference, as I just really thank you for lighting it up for conferences like the EcoFarm Conference and conferences and gatherings worldwide, because we all have so much to learn from them and from each other. So big love, Leyna. You make yourself an amazing day, and I'll see you at the next gathering or conference that we cross paths at.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And thanks for your good work amplifying these stories.
Thank you. Thank you.
Grateful you joined us for that conversation and interview. If you haven't subscribed to Heart and Soil Magazine yet, head over to heartandsoilmagazine.com, click on that subscribe button, and join us for just $39.99 a year. You make yourself an amazing day, and I'm really grateful you're part of our community.